Hey, hi. Welcome to Someone Else's Movie, the original podcast where an actor, writer, director, or nebulous industry figure gives a little love to a movie they didn't make. I'm Norm Wilner, senior film writer for Now Magazine, and this is the other thing I do. My guest this week is Ricardo Hoyos, an actor who spent the last decade in front of a camera. He was in Toronto Stories, he played Zig Novak in Degrassi The Next Generation and Degrassi The Next Class, and you might have seen him in the John Doerr television show, Killjoys, and Sadie's Last Days on Earth. Or maybe you saw him as Trip, an 80s guy, in Travis Knight's Bumblebee, which landed on disc and digital last month. That's probably it. Ricardo picked Dumb and Dumber, the 1994 buddy comedy that put Bobby and Peter Farrelly on the map, cemented Jim Carrey as a phenomenon, and worked out pretty okay for Jeff Daniels as well. A road picture following the world's stupidest men from Providence, Rhode Island to Aspen, Colorado, as they try to deliver a briefcase to a pretty lady played by Lauren Holly. It's basically just a series of dopey responses to ridiculous situations, in the tradition of the Three Stooges, but, with one less of them, and it pushed the boundaries of American comedy filmmaking kind of into the stratosphere. It was a big deal. Ricardo loved it. This is Someone Else's Movie.
I didn't know what I was going to do for a long time. I was really thinking about it, and I wanted to pick a good one.
Yeah.
And the one thing that... the idea of, what was one of the clips, was like talking about how you can't believe a movie got made, right?
Sure,
like,
yeah.
That movie is so weird. And the script, and it's such a bizarre movie. I can't believe that it got made. Like, that, I don't know who pitched that to who. I don't know, like, Jim Carrey said that, and they're both just so great in it. Like, it's just like one of those movies I can always put on, and every single scene is so funny, and it's like there's nothing like it,
Yeah.
No story like that. Although the second one, have you seen the second one?
The one with them. No,
Yeah.
I never did. I saw the prequel. And that sort of put me off.
Yeah. That one, I saw that as well. Kind of silly, but no, that second one they just came out with was like, oh man. It's sad how bad it is. Like, I'm a really big fan of the first one, so I guess I had high expectations, but, like, I knew it was never going to be as good, but it was just, like, so... Man, I don't know how they, like, did it so bad when the first one was so good.
Yeah, I think that might be it, though. I think the original Dumb and Dumber is such a bizarre lightning in a bottle opportunity.
Yeah, exactly.
It was before... it was before anyone knew what to expect from that concept, and the Farrellys were still kind of weird and untrained and just following their instincts. You're right, exactly, when you say that you don't know how it got made. I don't know how it turned into a movie. It just feels like some cameras were following people around and they got lucky.
Yeah, totally.
So what was your first experience of it? When did you see it theatrically?
No. I saw it, I don't even remember the first time I saw it. But I've seen it so many times since, and I feel like every time there's still stuff that I'm noticing that I haven't seen before. And, like, such, like, hilarious little nuance. Like, Jim Carrey is really... He's so committed to that character, and I don't know how he came up with that guy. Like, it's so unique and weird. Like, yeah, he's so funny.
It's, I've been amazed at Carrey's... success because he's from Toronto. I knew of him as an impressionist when he was here, and I'd interviewed him once.
Wow, cool.
I think just before Ace Ventura.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was a fun conversation. He was hosting a gala for, I want to say the other thing that was maybe the Toronto Comedy Festival. It was the rival to Just for Laughs, the thing that they tried to stage that didn't take. And I got to talk to him I was writing for the Toronto Star, and so we got a fairly long interview slot, and he was just, I don't know, I'm gonna, keep still on In Living Color. We were talking about the LA riots, they just happened. Wow. And he's like, I got a couple of movies coming, but I don't know, they sound really weird. And it was Ace Ventura and Dumb and Dumber. And to see somebody so perfectly positioned to be that guy.
Seriously.
And Ace Ventura
is, I mean, hideously transphobic, and it's like, you know, it's massively problematic in ways that that it's disturbing that no one thought were problematic back then. Like we find that with a lot of comedy, right? Like things just date very badly as soon as they're removed from their sphere. But with Dumb and Dumber, they found something like that's weirder and purer and sweeter. Yeah,
it's almost like a child thing that we can all relate to somehow. But no, I think you're just saying like about kind of his weird movies coming out in his career after that. I'm so fascinated by like his career and all the films that he's done are so different and characters that truly I don't think anyone else could have done. You know, like you look at Dumb and Dumber, you look at Ace Ventura, you look at The Grinch, you look at The Mask.
Yeah.
Those all came out in like 5 years and are like some of the most weirdly extroverted. Like I can't see anyone doing that and like grounding it the way that he did.
Yeah, he finds the catch, and there's that moment fairly early in Dumb and Dumber about how Lloyd is lonely and he doesn't want to, you know, like I want to have somebody, or I don't ever want to have nobody, or the way he phrases it. And his voice catches, and you just think,
so earnest. Yeah,
this guy's going to be a dramatic actor eventually, but right now, he's almost too real for a second there. Because he's also just complained that his pet's heads are falling off, which is my favorite. That delivery is my favorite in the whole movie. That's
it's so good.
It says everything about like the logic that applies, the weird. It tells us everything about him and the world the movie takes place in. And I gotta say, when I first heard that they were casting Jeff Daniels, I had reservations, because there's one moment in the film where they pull up in the van and Harry's asleep, and it looks like a smarter person, because Jeff Daniels is very intelligent. I was just like, can he really? Because Jim Carrey I know can be goofy, but Daniels, I mean, he was nominated for an Oscar for Terms of Endearment. He's a dramatic actor. He's gone back to that now with the whole Voice of Reason Aaron Sorkin thing. To see him in this, and again within 2 minutes, just like, oh, he wants to do this. This isn't a mistake. He knew what they had.
There's an interview that I watched with Jim Carrey talking about Daniels on set for Dumb and Dumber, and like he's like, I would just get such a kick out of watching him like right before we would start filming. You know, he would look like Jeff Daniels, a smart, you know, respectable professional, and then like once rolling would be called, he would just put on this dopey face, like really let his like eyes droop, and like it was like he explains it as being like a really great I don't think he says learning experience, but just like watching a great work.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's a physical performance, but it's also one that's going on behind the eyes, and there's a slackening in his face where he's just sort of drooped a little bit. What you see is someone who is fully committed to something that is completely alien to him, and it's, you know, the part of that conversation about how we don't give Oscars to comedy performances and no one takes this stuff seriously. But as supporting performance goes, it's virtuosity. I did not ever think I would laugh that hard at a toilet joke, and Daniels gives it acts. Like there's a first, second, and third movement to that sequence that is just like, I've watched it on its own and just sort of stared at it. How did they know? Like, how did even the camera placement is clever. Like, they know exactly where to put the camera, which is not something the Farrellys did very often. There's this moment in Me, Myself, and I where Carrie has to murder an animatronic cow, and it isn't funny because you see they built the cow and you see it. If it was just out of, I remember seeing that theatrically and thinking, oh, you know what? If you just tilt the camera up 4 inches and we don't see it, and all you see is the rage that Carrie is trying to muster up to kill this animal, then it's funny. But instead, it's just like, ugh. But with Dumb and Dumber, like, everything lines up. The shot of, just the shot of him on the shot of Jeff Daniels on the toilet, the shot of Jim Carrey emerging from that bus, missing his tooth, and just grinning like a fool, but with pure radiant happiness. Everything seems to be right. People move into their light. People catch the frame. No,
I think he said it perfectly there. It's really just an example of, like, just perfect execution. They had their idea and they made it perfect. It's this unique, completely individualistic thing. Like, nothing is like. I can't think of anything that's really like that movie.
Yeah. So at what point in your development as a performer does it hit you? Is it the kind of thing that shows you that there's a bigger space you can fill, or is it?
Yeah, I think, like, I love watching comedies. Like, that's kind of my neutral, is I'll just always want to put on a comedy. And, you know, you say, like, we're not traditionally given awards for comedy, and it's too bad, because I don't know if there is a harder, like, medium to be acting in, you know? Like, it's when you know a line is coming, and to keep, like, the spontaneity of humor is so much more difficult for me anyway than, like, a dramatic scene. A dramatic scene is, like, the easiest scene for me, because it's really, especially if it's really, like, heavy, like, it's just easier to get into it because it's, like, the words are heavy. You can't not feel that way.
Right.
But to amp yourself up to, like, and the timing of comedy is just so... I think subconsciously I'm just watching all these comedies all the time. It just, like, you want to be like that. You want to be as funny as Jim Carrey in Dumb and Dumber. You quote the entire movie. Yeah. You know, you chip your tooth. You cut your hair with a bowl.
Yeah. It is just so simple too. I mean, he had the chip was already there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he removed a filling or a plate, I guess you'd call it. But he had a filler, and he said, I think I have the character, and just popped it out, and they're like, yeah, okay, go for it.
Yeah, that's the guy.
Plus the haircut.
Yeah,
and the weird... He's kind of rigid physically, but not exactly. Like, the rubber face thing that Jim Carrey has, he's almost working against it here or there because he's trying to behave himself. Like the funniest thing for me about a comedy is when someone is desperately trying to do something that they aren't supposed to do or that they can't do, because it puts us, it makes them instantly vulnerable because you see the need and the desire. It also just makes us, really appreciate the disaster that's coming. You're always aware of it. And Dumb and Dumber introduces a spy plot that isn't really a spy plot, just a series of misunderstandings. And they have to be, this is the key to it, right? They have to be believably dumb enough to fall into everything that happens to them, but still be able to feed themselves and still be able to drive a car. So it's not Three Stooges level of ineptitude where just putting these people in the same space guarantees you a disaster. We have to have a rooting interest in these two. We don't want them to die. But they are also just so good at getting in each other's way.
It's amazing that they were able to toe that line between absurdity and reality, because, like you're saying, we're rooting for these guys. These guys are real people. We just want them to have a win. And so much of the movie is so absurd on paper and on film.
Yeah, I was going to say, it keeps right on going.
And, like, physically, like, they look so silly, and, like, it's just so impressive to me that they were able to, Jim Carrey and Daniel specifically, and even just the writing of the plot and everything else is just, that's hard to do. That's hard to find that balance.
Yeah.
Especially with that movie.
I think Mike Starr deserves a lot of the credit because he is allowed to never like them. Like, he just hates them. They are an impediment to everything he's trying to do. He really wants to just kill them at one point or another, or several points.
And they're so oblivious, like best friends.
Yeah,
too. Oh,
best friends, but they're tormented.
Yeah, why don't you eat your burger? You'll find out.
Yeah, it's just horrifying. But it's this weird throwback mentality to the, it's Margaret Dumont and the Marx Brothers. It's the person we're not supposed to side with as an audience because we want to watch the chaos. But we have to understand where they're coming from, and it's just like, I would probably want to push these guys out of a moving car pretty quickly after meeting them. I would probably want to get a moving car just so I could put them in it and then push them out of it. And I thought, this guy, he's all right. He's a terrible person, but I'm kind of on his side.
When they're singing Mockingbird. Too.
Yeah, or Scream, or the most annoying noise in the world.
Where did that come?
I suspect that was just a long boredom take. We'll roll for 20 minutes. You do it.
Oh man, yeah, that would be like. There's so much I want to do in my career, and I love all the genres. Everything has its value and its attractiveness to me. Whether it be a drama or an action or a comedy. But I'm just really, I don't know if it gets any better than like that kind of set, or like something where it's like a group of friends are writing and producing it, where it's just like there's no worrying about the time, or like it's not a super stern, serious attitude on set. It's like we can take time to just let the camera roll and like be funny. Like let's just try to make each other laugh here. Like, how does it get better than that?
Yeah, well, it's friends who trust each other to find something.
Right.
And the Farrellys had this weird directorial style, which, by the time Peter Farrelly made Green Book, and when he brought it to TIFF, he was saying, we just let Vego and Merschel figure it out. I didn't really direct them. And it's like, yeah, I can totally tell, because you don't direct actors. But his strength as a filmmaker is in, and Bobby's too, I guess, I mean, they worked together for most of their career, is to just let things happen and then figure it out. And, I mean, I know they do multiple takes, and I know they refine stuff, but there's a certain disorganization to their process. The lighting kind of sucks most of the time, and they cast their friends from Rhode Island in a lot of roles, and you can always tell they're these kind of beefy middle-aged guys standing around, not unlike people who looked like Mike Starr, but as the films went on, like Shallow Hal and Hall Pass is full of them. They're just guys from the neighborhood who I assume were around, and it's like, I don't know, you want to be a bellhop? Yeah, I'll be a bellhop. Dumb and Dumber happened when they were still relatively accountable, right? Like it was their first huge hit.
Right.
Was it their first feature? I think it might have been their first directorial effort.
I think so. Yeah.
And they were still answerable to New Line, and New Line was like, you make a movie, you have to do certain things, you have to have actors, and the love interest, and again, Lauren Holly is just wonderful, but she's also steering herself a lot more than most of the female leads would in subsequent movies. And so I think what we got out of it was controlled chaos, where they're doing what they like, which is, I don't know, a guy falls out of this and something else falls over here, and laxative joke. But it's organized into a flowchart that actually feels like a narrative, right? Like it actually makes sense. Their first couple of movies, Me, Myself, and Irene, maybe not so much, but certainly Something About Mary and even Shallow Hal, I would argue, are films that are tethered to plot and have a reason for everything that happens, and then they started to get sillier as they went on. But yeah, Dumb and Dumber also just has this pure anarchy bouncing around inside the frame. Like they were willing to try anything as long as like it's like the rule about make one for you and one for them. They were doing the same thing with every scene. Yeah.
No, and you can feel that energy in every scene. It like, no matter how many times I watch it, it really is like they capture that excitement of like anything could be said, like and anything is said, and you pick up on more things each time you see it. But you just mentioned There's Something About Mary, and
I keep waiting for someone to bring that to the podcast. No one has.
I love that movie. Love it. That's another one too that like, it's just such a, like, they got those guys coming in and playing the songs.
Oh, Jonathan Richman. Yeah, who's like an early, he was sort of crossed the road between folk and punk before punk was even a thing. Like he wrote Roadrunner. It's one of the greatest rock songs ever.
Oh, wow.
And there he is sitting and singing songs, and just, I remember that the experience of seeing it theatrically at a press screening, and just watching that camera tilt and thinking, oh, okay, you're trying this now.
Yeah. There's that experimentation that I just think is so cool. I love that the creative process, to be able to be at that level and to still be having fun with it, or to have the freedom to have fun with it, is just like, that's the stuff. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's the the same thing, like the impulse to throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks,
Mm-hmm.
that almost, I mean, it becomes a thing that works against them as it goes on because they lost their control of tone.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Hall Pass it's almost unwatchable, but it's a movie about people who are middle-aged and comfortable trying to shake up their lives, and I'm just like, are you guys making a movie about yourselves? Do you know this?
Yeah.
Like, resonant? Is there any resonance? And then I actually got to interview Bobby when he came through for the film, and he was absolutely not interested in exploring any of that stuff. It's
Wow.
like, no, we just thought this was funny. It's like, okay, but did you think this was funny because you guys are the same age as these characters, or not far off, and maybe there's something going on about wanting to do something different? It's like, no, I don't think so. And then like 4 years later, Peter makes Green Book, and it's like, you wanted to do something different. Your brother maybe didn't. But there's so, I think when you're being that inventive, your ideas are going to leak out, and you'll see we can see the motivations maybe even better than the filmmakers do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But when they're young and they have nothing to lose and they don't really understand the rules, that's when you get the most. I mean, what is it? That's how you get Eva Mendes in Stuck on You, which is just, kind of a disposable movie, but it's not bad. And the ideas that pinball around, like there's that amazing performance that she gives. There's the heart-to-heart that Damon has with somebody while Kinnear's listening to the Robert Evans audiobook, which is just stuck in my head. What is this, 10 years later? I still remember the scene, probably longer. Just this really serious heart-to-heart that Matt Damon is having with his love interest, and then in the background Kinnear just says, he banged him all. And it's the delivery and the glee. It's such a weird moment, and it's instantly snaps you back to Dumb and Dumber and how weirdly fertile it is as a comedy. It's just like, yeah, you're right, anything can happen at any time.
It kind of reminds me of like the Beatles, like I like to equate a lot of creative stuff back to like they really kind of paved the way for like artists to really think about how they put stuff together, I think.
Sure. But these guys are both Ringo in this, like,
right,
Harry and Lloyd are both Ringo, with no timing, with no rhythm. They're putting their hands on the drums.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. Where does Dumb and Dumber fall on the continuum?
Yeah, I think it's like it's early experimentation, like you're saying.
So
like,
White Album Beatles, or
maybe White Album Beatles, maybe like Just After Help, like Beatles for Sale or Rubber Soul.
Okay.
Where they're just kind of starting to branch out and try some new ideas. It's not really the Beatlemania, I saw her stand there, twist and shout. They're kind of starting to mix in some different textures there and go just in every direction. Like, they don't really know where they're going. But then you get this incredible stuff like, what's the one record I really... So, Revolver.
I was about to say, it sounds like you're describing Revolver.
Yeah. You get to Tomorrow Never Knows. They're, like, really big, like, first psychedelic song that kind of touches on that stuff. And it is, to this day, like, one of the biggest musical innovations, they say. Like, the way that they went about producing that song was so different from any of the other songs on the album, but also any other song recorded.
Well, isn't that the track that invented tape loops?
Yeah, and backwards tape. Yeah, that was the very first one. And so, yeah, I think that's where I see their, like, Dumb and Dumber and, like, all the rest of the movies that followed in the 90s, like, feel very much like they're finding that absurdity is their experimentation of, like, what can we do that's just funny, that just makes us laugh.
So it's intuitive, like they're just following their instincts and seeing where it goes.
I think so, yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, certainly Carrey was the guy for that, right? Like, if you wanted to... I mean, The Mask was, 6 months away, and he was doing elaborate Cuban Ricardo stuff, and just that Chuck Russell would just pop that scene into a film where let's break out in song. And yeah, Beetlejuice had done it 7 years earlier, but they'd never done it with the level of, like, the CG and the ridiculous excess, which somehow suited Carrey's persona.
Worked.
Yeah, it's like the right place, right time thing.
Yeah. He's really just such a unique talent. He's really just one of those guys that I don't think any of those movies would have even worked without him.
Yeah, no, who else would you cast? I mean, Carrey could have been played by another middle-aged actor, or
Sure.
like 45-year-old, I guess.
Yeah.
It's still middle-aged. But whatever the equivalent was, like John Lithgow could have done that.
Right.
Or I thought it was funny, on the way down here I was thinking about one other person. It was the weirdness of the idea that Ben Stiller and Robert De Niro would be a good comic duo, right? It's the opposites.
Yeah.
They're kind of physically similar, but they're very, very different. And it's about the collision of personas in Meet the Parents.
Yeah.
And I was trying to figure out if maybe De Niro would be wrong, but Chas Palminteri, I thought, might have done it. Like, it would have been a different character, but somebody with the same kind of physical space that he occupies more room.
Right.
He could have maybe played it, but he was already a little too old. And I got lost in this rabbit hole of, like alternate casting.
Yeah.
But I think you really need it to be Carrey and Daniels. Like, that's the alchemy of it.
Yeah, 100%. It's just one of those scripts that is so unique, and those actors are so unique, Carrey specifically. But Daniels too, like feeding off of him and balancing him out. It kind of reminds me, I love art. Like, contrast is such a big key, I think, in like anything. You gotta balance it out. And you see that in Dumb and Dumber, and you see that also, oh man, I just had it. Oh, it's gone now.
It's okay, we can cut around it.
I had another duo in my head that like really just... Oh yeah, so, do you know the Eric Andre show, by any chance?
Eric Andre, yes.
Yeah,
no, absolutely, yeah.
So, it's pretty new, and it's a show that I watched a handful of times and like did not get. Didn't think it was funny. I kind of was like annoyed by him.
Mm-hmm.
And as I watched it more and more, it reminded me of that kind of Dumb and Dumber-esque duality of like two very separate energies like balancing each other out. And it's this host who's just crazy. He's Jim Carrey. He's nuts. Eric Andre is like just super all over the place. Like, he starts every episode with like destroying his set. Like 5 minutes of him just like screaming, running around, like throwing stuff, like breaking everything. Like, it's a very bizarre show. There's nothing like it.
Okay.
But his co-host is like this super relaxed guy that like calls him out when he does weird stuff. He's like, "What? That joke doesn't even make any sense, man."
Right. So he's holding him accountable.
Yeah. You're thinking that, and then he says it.
Right.
And it just works really, really well. Like, but I didn't get it at first. It was something that like I didn't even really like, but now I'm like really hooked on it.
I know Andre mostly through Man Seeking Woman.
I love Man Seeking
Yeah.
Woman. Oh, I love Man Seeking Woman.
Yeah.
My buddy was in that, and I threw it on thinking I was gonna get through like one episode. Like, I know you're in it, man, but like I can't just like I don't have the commitment in me to like, start a show if it's like not good. And I watched one episode thinking like if he's not in the first one, I'm just not gonna spend the time. And I like watched the whole thing in like 2 days.
Yeah,
watched all 3 seasons.
I can't believe they canceled it when they did. I mean, it goes out on a good note, but it just...
Yeah. So it really left you begging for more.
Yeah.
I love that show.
And it has that kind of casual absurdity where everything that happens in the world makes sense, but it's still...
So absurd. It's like a cartoon show.
Yeah. And we're allowed to understand that the characters find it cartoonish as well.
Yeah.
Baruchel manages to play both parts.
Yeah.
Of the, he'll be, how did he put it once? It's like, the whole show is about him being pulled into the world of the other characters, and he's the one who's sort of resisting it, but his need to belong and his need to be in a relationship, all of it keeps pulling him forward, and it isn't until the 3rd season when he finds the right girl that they can actually, and we don't even get to see how they met, which is great. She's just there. There's a time jump in the third season, and it's just this delightful relationship, and it's about finding the right kind of crazy in the other people. And it was such a wonderful argument for itself over the years, and now it's gone.
It's so sad. I really, it shows like that, shows like happy endings, where it's like 3 seasons and then they're done. Like, how did And then you got these other shows that are on for 10 seasons that are just disgusting.
People like what they like. I don't know how to justify it. I've learned over the years that things don't. I mean, now more than ever, things don't die. Right?
Yeah.
Like if you can keep something going.
Yeah.
But then you find the shows like New Girl that ran for 6.5 or 7, shorter 7th season, and it feels like a miracle.
Yeah.
Because the tone never changed, and they figured it out, and the characters grew, and you get everything you want from them. And then there are other shows where they're not really that interested in growth, but they'll just keep going.
Yeah.
And I guess that makes it easier. But yeah, for an undemanding viewer, sure, there can be 12 seasons of Big Bang Theory. I've lost count.
Something like that. Did you know
they're finally wrapping it? But.
Yeah, thank God. Did you know the lead actor Jim Parsons beat out Steve Carell every single year, 9 years in a row for best leading actor in a comedy series at Emmys? Michael Scott. Office.
Yeah. It's I wonder if it isn't because the precision of it seems more challenging to the voter, the average. It's the Oscar joke, right? You confuse best acting with most acting.
Yeah.
And so maintaining that one note, it's how Hoffman got the Oscar for Rain Man. It's how, arguably, how Hanks got it for Forrest Gump. Although I think that's a great performance with some notes to it. But you can mistake it for something, something else. And yeah, I can see Parsons winning a lot of Emmys for that. And I also, I'm comforted by the fact that he seems to be really invested in doing good work outside of it and working with charities and making the most of this thing that happened to him. But yeah, I think he's also pretty much ready to hang it up.
Yeah. I think like any show where you're working on the same character for that long, it gets stale. Yeah.
It would have to.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you get incredibly lucky and you get writers who are willing to challenge the concept over and over again. But that's not what you do with a sitcom, right?
Yeah.
And it's, that's Carrey's relationship to his comic roles too. He very quickly started changing it up. What was Man on the Moon was 99, so that's 5 years after Dumb and Dumber. He's already taking major risks artistically.
Yeah.
Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is just a few years away.
Yeah.
Which is one of the greatest.
Love that movie.
Yeah, and one of the greatest uses of Carrey, right? Because the vulnerability is cranked so far up, but the movie still lets him do all the other stuff that we want to see.
Yeah.
It just finds the right context for him.
Yeah.
What was the last comedy he did? Straight comedy, probably Burt Wonderstone? Was that it?
I love that movie.
I did too, actually.
Really
I gotta say,
fun.
I did the junket for that. That was fun.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
He is so good in that. I love that movie.
That's kind of a showcase of his other great virtue as an actor, which is that he's willing to be unlikable and unpleasant.
Yeah.
Because that character is just ugly.
Yeah.
But compelling.
Yeah. Steve Gray, brain rapist.
That's right. Oh God, the idea that he and that he committed to the workout, the exercise stuff, and he doesn't look good. I mean, he doesn't look healthy. And he said he did that was intentional. He just smeared himself with this the hair oil, and then just kept going. It's all over him, and it's horrible. But he'll go there. He's an incredibly determined performer, and sometimes that isn't the best thing for him. Movies like The Majestic, where he just kind of misgauged the tone. Everybody did. Frank Darabont wanted to make another big heartfelt Americana movie, but all of his heartfelt Americana movies actively ignore the darkness that powers Shawshank, and he just keeps trying to redo that. And I don't blame Carrey for it, but that or the Number 23, where he dives right in. He's giving the performance that's been asked of him. But there's something about when he does a comedy full on, you see it. You see the animating spark that's in Lloyd.
Yeah, 100%. It's really inspiring to me to look at someone with a career like that as well and think of, he got a lot of ridicule and still does to this day for being a goofball kind of guy, not a serious actor, but to walk away from such goofy, not walk away, but do such a goofy role one year and then the next year come with them, with Eternal Sunshine, right? and then to go back to it is like just so independently minded. Like, who cares what everyone else is saying or what everyone else thinks they know about me? Like, I'm just gonna do what I do, and I'm gonna give it my all, and I don't care if people call me this or try to, blackball me on that. Like, I can do anything I want.
Yeah, and he has the talent to back it up.
And he does.
I mean, obviously that's why it happens. I mean, Cable Guy. There's another one where
Love Cable Guy.
it was deemed unworkable. Nobody wanted to release it. Nobody wanted to make it. Everybody.
Wow.
Well, if you listen to there's a commentary that Apatow, Stiller, and Carrey recorded for I think it was the 20th anniversary Blu-ray, and it's all about how we didn't believe in ourselves. We were sure it was going to bomb. It kind of did. It was it's this weird. Yeah. It keeps coming back up throughout the conversation. They're really proud of it. They knew what they wanted to do and they did it. But there's also this weird self-doubt that plagues them throughout the production. That they're 20 years later they reconcile themselves to doing it. But just the sense that the performance is, and the original conception of him, where Chip was a murderer and he was actively killing people. He wasn't just sort of a chaos demon.
Yeah.
And it was dark, and then it was lighter, and then they pulled it back, and then they went forward. And it's this amazing negotiation process that they were doing constantly to figure out what kind of movie they wanted it to be, even after it was shot.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's really something. And again, a film that just was sort of queasily dealt with when it came out. It's just like, I don't know, it's kind of weird. I saw it with a packed house that did not like it.
Oh, wow.
And it was really fascinating. There were jokes that landed. There were moments where people laughed, but you could feel the energy shift in the room. It's just like, nobody wanted it. And I think if you made it now, there's probably, I'm sure there'll be a remake. Everything gets remade, but there's probably potential there to explore it. And the weird codependent running gag that goes through the whole thing, his energy was perfect for that. And it's the neediness of Lloyd. He doesn't want to be alone. He can't function without Harry, but he really wants to have a relationship. They haven't, again, it's all idealization. They haven't thought it through. He doesn't know what he would do with a girlfriend. Like, they would go for walks and probably talk. Like, he doesn't. But he snaps right into that performance as soon as he has the opportunity, and it's fascinating. You're watching someone like front as an adult and so clearly fail to pull it off that it is delightful. It really is wonderful.
Yeah. Speaking of like remakes and stuff, The Mask, like one of his most animated.
Literally, yeah.
And just an incredible performance. Such a funny, weird, one-off, like its own thing movie as well, which is just Carrey's career, really. Like I'm so amazed. But they did a second one with Jamie Kennedy.
Oh yeah, I saw it.
And that first scene when he puts on the mask and like there's a number that's trying to like live up to, like, it just is so. And like Jamie Kennedy, like, I'm sure he's not bad, he's not awful, but it's just fault. No one can touch that and make it real the same way he did. It's so impressive to me that he's able to ground these larger than life characters, because everything, even the Grinch, feels like a person. You feel for this hairy green guy.
Yeah.
You feel for the most disgusting creature to ever exist.
Yeah, it's the natural empathy that he projects.
Yeah.
That he doesn't project it, he invites it.
Yeah.
Half the time you're watching, you're just thinking, oh, don't do that.
Yeah.
It'll be better if you don't.
It's okay.
But he can't help himself.
Yeah,
it's the cartoon archetype of Daffy Duck, which is that he wants something, but he can't allow himself to have it.
Yeah.
And then there's the Bugs Bunny archetype of someone who is really just kind of a prankster, doesn't really have anything invested, will kill you if you cross him, but really probably doesn't want to go to the effort.
Yeah.
And Carrey finds the middle of those two, where he is capable, most of the time his characters are capable of being normal, decent human beings, but they want stuff. And it starts to pull. And the mask, the mask actually makes it flesh. You have
it is.
You have the decision to put the mask on.
Yeah,
but
we all wear masks. Metaphorically speaking.
Exactly, and the fact that he could get that dialogue out with those teeth, and it's a physical performer. There aren't a lot who can do what he does.
No.
But yeah, with Dumb and Dumber, he found, like, he stumbled into the perfect box for what he could do.
Yeah.
And showed us everything.
Yeah.
And then just kept going, which is kind of amazing.
Yeah. I every one of his roles, it's really like, I don't see anyone else being able to make this work even.
Like, yeah, no, how would you? He can find it's like he reads a language into the script that isn't there.
Yeah.
He can communicate with. It's funny too, because when this is going to be a weird segue, but when The Dark Knight came out and Heath Ledger's Joker was there, it's just like, oh, that was kind of what Carrey's Riddler wanted to be.
Yeah.
But it couldn't come out.
That
Like,
movie.
they just that movie wouldn't allow it.
Yeah.
And the idea of a villain who enjoys villainy without I mean, I think the problem with Batman Forever is there are so many problems that it's hard to figure out which one it is. But Carrey is he's trying to create a coherent character, and I think the vision of the film just doesn't allow for it.
Yeah.
But when I saw Ledger do it, it's like, oh, that's kind of what you were getting at. The intensity of vision, the idea that you're so focused on your goal and that you're enjoying it. That's something that happens in all of his movies. Like Ace Ventura is a character who entertains himself more than that. Like that's the Bugs Bunny character.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then Lloyd is like Lloyd and Harry together are kind of Daffy Duck because they're incapable of getting what they want, and they get angry at each other for perceived, interference, but they're their own worst enemy. But yeah, it's Carrey's unique. Like, there's no one else who does what he does when he's nailing it. So yeah, I didn't see the sequel, but how do they handle? I mean, how do they handle the age of Dumb and Dumber? How do they handle the fact that it's 20 years later?
It was actually kind of a funny beginning. There's a good gag where like, Lloyd has been in like this old age home or something, or like a psychiatric ward where he's like brain dead. And Harry comes to visit like every day for 20 years. And then, like, it was a prank the whole time. Like, Jim Carrey, like, snaps at it. He's like, gotcha! It's like, well, you just been pretending to be, like, brain dead for 20 years. And he's like, yeah, and I gotcha. That's probably the only funny part of the movie, sadly.
That is at least consistent with who they are.
But, I don't know. I think, because they wanted, I know that, like, before it came out, there's a lot of news about how Dumb and Dumber 2 is going to be coming out for years, and, the script's not right yet, and all these moving parts need to be perfect, otherwise Carrey and Daniels won't do it, so you think it's going to be done right. And it just seemed like none of that really came to fruition. Like, it wasn't a movie. It was just not at all the same approach as the first. It was totally a blockbuster gag thing.
Didn't have the intimacy.
Didn't have like this the characters, man, just weren't. It was. Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to put it on those guys because like there's only so much you can do as an actor, but like it really just felt like it wasn't there. Maybe it really just was like a perfect time and place for everybody involved. Carrey, Daniels, the Farrellys, like those, they just can't be recreated. Like,
yeah, I mean, and not everything needs a sequel. I've come up against this all the time. The idea that if there is something that's, fun and self-contained, you can leave it alone. But we just don't have that anymore.
Yeah, no. It just seemed to be so profit-driven more than anything else. Like, the care wasn't in it in this one.
Yeah, well, we still have the original. It holds up. So, and yeah, this brings me to the question that I love asking at the end of the podcast, which is that, what if anything of the movie of Dumb and Dumber, performances, structure, writing, approach, aesthetic, is there a point where you've borrowed or stolen or lifted anything?
Yeah. Oh man, for sure. I feel like it would probably be subtle stuff, but just like I think you can pick up on like a cadence, you know, a rhythm of humor. Like that's a huge part of what makes that movie and any movie really great is like the timing is it's very rhythmic. But specifically, let me think. I definitely said our pets' heads are falling off like last week.
Right. Like, for example, Ennis Esmer told me that he works the Amigos salute from Three Amigos into everything he does.
Oh, wow.
Or tries to. And he finally got it. I think it was Red Oaks, they let him keep it in.
Oh, wow.
But it's
That's
just like,
great.
I've been working on this for years, and I finally found a place for it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I can't say I have one of those for Dumb and Dumber, but I do also love the Austin Powers movies.
Okay.
Those are like very big for my like growing up, and I definitely lift so much stuff from that. But one in particular that I got in a scene on a show that I was doing. What was it again? There's this scene in Austin Powers where he's playing chess with Ivana Humpala. And she's starting to be sexy with the pieces and touching them and stuff, and the camera just goes in and he's like it's just it's so guttural, like you really just and that I worked into a scene.
How?
So the scene was it was like I'm at this high school, like checking in cheerleaders that are coming to do like a tournament at the school, and like this one comes up and there's kind of like a moment where I look to my buddy like, whoa, pretty hot, and I just like I wouldn't stop badgering the tracker. I was like, come on, just let me do it. He's like, we'll get a couple where you don't do it.
Right, yeah, one for us, one
and
for
then
you.
yeah, but then it ended up getting in. That was the take they chose. So yeah, that's one I like to throw in there. It's a good one because you can do it like in public and like people won't really know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And somewhere out there, Mike Myers shivers like someone's pulled on the back of his head.
Yeah.
No, it's good. It's a, what is it? A continuity of history.
Yeah.
A tribute.
Yeah, exactly. No, just two great Canadian
It's true.
guys, man. I really love those guys. I love all the movies that they made.
Kind of defined the 90s for comedy, too, in a weird way.
Yeah.
Like the Austin Powers and Ace Ventura are like opposite ends of a pole.
Mm-hmm.
A weird sexist pole.
Yeah.
My thanks to Ricardo Hoyos, who you can see being totally tubular as an 80s guy named Trip in Bumblebee, now available on disc and digital from Paramount Home Entertainment. Thanks also to Stephen Shin. He knows what he did. You can find Ricardo on Twitter at RicardoHoyos2, RicardoHoyos, numeral 2, all one word. And you can find Dumb and Dumber on Blu-ray and DVD from Warner Home Video in the US and from E1 in Canada. It's also available on iTunes and Google Play. And you should check out Ricardo's band, Dog Cosmic. The new single, Let You Inside, just dropped on Apple Music yesterday. As always, you can find me on Twitter at Norm Wilner and elsewhere on the internet at nowtoronto.com. You can also find this podcast on Twitter at Semcast, SEMcast, and on the web at someoneelsesmovie.com. If you feel like leaving a review on iTunes or Apple Podcasts or wherever you enjoy the show, that would be greatly appreciated. Every little bit helps, it truly does. Thanks for your support, and thanks for listening.
I'm afraid you're just too darn loud.